Welcome to The Explainer. If you're someone who really likes to get under the hood and uncover the hidden structures of our digital world, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking this incredible, centuries-spanning journey from the mythological heights of ancient Greece all the way down into the cutting-edge code of modern digital architecture. Okay, let's just dive right into it. What does a Greek god's migraine have to do with the architecture of the modern digital internet? I know, it sounds like the setup to a really weird joke, right? But honestly, it actually unlocks this core metaphor for how human beings build, share, and collaborate on complex technology today. It's really a story about how we conceptualize creation itself, moving from physical building blocks to pure structural thought. So to answer that, we actually have to travel back thousands of years to this classical Greek terracotta kylix. Now, according to the ancient myth, Zeus, the king of the gods, learned of a terrifying prophecy. His pregnant wife, Metis, who was the goddess of thought, was basically destined to bear a son more powerful than him. So to prevent this, Zeus did what, any completely rational mythological king would do. He swallowed her whole. But obviously, the story doesn't end there. Shortly after swallowing his wife, Zeus ends up suffering from this monumental, agonizing headache. And the cure? Well, his head was literally cleaved open with an axe. And from that wound emerged Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare, fully grown and wearing armor. He didn't just create her, he literally birthed a god directly out of his own mind. And this brings us to a really brilliant conceptual contrast: biological motherhood versus what scholars actually call intellectual motherhood. In biology, you've got a physical womb. There's shared genetics, pain, it's messy. But intellectual motherhood, that views the inventor's mind as this pristine, hygienic womb. The creator serves as the absolute sole architect of the idea, completely bypassing the physical limitations of the natural world. Its creation stripped of biology, reduced entirely to pure logic and design. Its creation stripped of biology, reduced entirely to pure logic and design. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the Greek phrase right here, ekkephalos, which literally translates to out of the head. It shows exactly how these ancient cultures viewed the head as an immaculate space for structured conceptual conception. By using his head as a womb, Zeus totally bypassed the physical, emotional realities of traditional childbirth. He claimed absolute ownership over a deeply complex strategic entity, establishing a framework entirely inside his own intellect. All right, smash cut right back to the modern day, which brings us directly to this number, U.S. Patent 12,664,142. This isn't just some random string of digits. It actually represents a physical and legal manifestation of that exact same mythological concept of intellectual motherhood, but applied to the very code running our digital lives today. It's essentially a modern-day Zeus establishing a brand new domain. Because just like Zeus, the creator of this specific patent is acting as an intellectual mother. The patent describes executing a script of an event handler vertex using an interpreter. What this really means is they're birthing a pure conceptual architecture, a mental model. They're not just hammering together some mechanical assembly of physical parts. The inventor is structuring this rigid, deterministic set of rules entirely out of thought, creating a pristine environment where logic reigns supreme. But here's where our modern digital architecture takes a massive leap past the ancient myth. This newly birthed architecture doesn't just stand in isolation. It establishes a strict structural framework that actually functions as an intellectual womb for other people. It actively invites external collaboration. It gives other developers a highly structured, secure space to build upon and execute their own ideas. It's not just a solo act anymore, it's a shared genesis. So how exactly do people build inside that shared intellectual space? Well, I absolutely love this quote from Mark Twain, who basically called the human mind a mental kaleidoscope. You don't just create out of thin air. Instead, you take existing knowledge, you give the perspective a twist, and suddenly those exact same colored glass pieces align into an entirely new, breathtaking pattern. We borrow, we adapt, and we rebuild. So, the crucial point here is combinatorial creativity. It's defined as the deliberate, cumulative rearrangement of an existing shared database of human knowledge to solve new problems. And this permanently shatters that romantic 19th century myth of the lone genius locked in a garage, somehow creating original ideas out of an absolute vacuum. True innovation is all about twisting that shared kaleidoscope. We rely completely on the mental models built by those who came before us. Let's move to this and see how this builds in the real world. The process operates in these very logical steps within shared frameworks. Step 1. Previous generations establish a base technology. Step 2. A new innovator comes along and executes a novel rearrangement. They literally twists the kaleidoscope. And then step 3. That new combination doesn't just stand alone. It instantly becomes a new foundational node, laying the scaffolding for tomorrow's inventor. Historically, this presents a really brilliant contrast. On one side, we have the modern lone genius myth, right? That isolated, property-driven trope where one person claims total ownership over a concept. But on the other side, we have the ethos of the ancient Mesopotamian scribes. Going all the way back to 3000 BCE, these scribes proudly saw themselves as collaborative remixers. They were ancient weavers, intentionally pulling existing cultural threads together to create a stronger fabric. They inherently understood that knowledge is communal. And if you want absolute proof of the immense power of this collective weaving, just let the staggering number sink in for a second. 6 million. That is the exact number of paper slips mailed in by everyday volunteers back in 1928 to help build the Oxford English Dictionary. I mean, it was literal crowdsourcing decades before that word even existed. The definitive record of the English language wasn't penned by one solitary mastermind. It was cumulatively assembled by thousands of contributors working toward a single massive architecture. And that really brings us to the core synthesis of today's explainer. We are all weavers of a collective reality. By finally shedding the illusion of the solitary creator, we can start to understand our actual role. When a modern developer utilizes something like the conceptual architecture outlined in patent 12,664,142, they're literally stepping into a shared intellectual womb. They're taking existing logic, adding their own twist, and actively weaving the massive interconnected digital ecosystem that we all rely on every single day. Which leaves us with one final, deeply important question to wrap up our explainers today. If we are all just weavers twisting the same kaleidoscope, what pattern will you add to the collective reality? You have the tools, you have the shared knowledge of thousands of years, and the intellectual womb is wide open. Thank you so much for joining me for this one. Keep learning, keep twisting that kaleidoscope, and I'll catch you next time.